Hey, good morning, Quad Cities. We have been tracking in a little bit of a tricky commute for some this morning, but we are starting to see those roads really begin to clear out for us. But of course, this is not even the major part of the weather that we have been tracking in this week. It's been an active week. I'm kind of calling this weekend the final boss of our active week because not only do we see another round of snow, we're going to see a lot of major cold associated with this. So that's going to be the one difference we see between yesterday's system and tomorrow's system because they look like almost identical when it comes to snow amounts expected as well as the track that it's taking. But I do want to give you a look right now at those road conditions. And then, of course, I'm going to dive into all the questions that I do see. I am on the Facebook right now. So we'll deep dive into that, try to get through all your questions for you. But first, let's take a look at those road conditions right now as we're still seeing some areas partially covered, especially on the Illinois side, where we saw most of those amounts up to around 2 to 3 inches, even some reports of 4 inches. Kind of near Macomb is where I was sifting through some of those higher reports. Here in the Quad Cities, only just about an inch, just under an inch for the metro area. And then, of course, lesser amounts off to the north. But we have seen at times some sunshine for this morning, which has been nice. But also it's been a little foggy with that this morning, too, from yesterday's system that brought in some of those snow showers. But again, waking up to quieter conditions for us today. We're likely going to see those clouds continue to build in and thicken up into the afternoon, all ahead of that next system. We do have a weak disturbance that could potentially bring in some flurries as we get into later on this evening, but no additional accumulation really expected until we get to tomorrow. So we already do have another alert in place, winter weather advisory, and it's almost identical to the winter weather advisory we saw yesterday. And I know that it's a sharp cutoff going into Illinois. Those counties are likely going to be added here pretty soon. What I'm thinking is National Weather Service is probably holding off on extending it for now just until the road conditions look a little bit better through Illinois, so they're not confusing people. But you can expect it through central Illinois too, that we're going to see a winter weather advisory get tacked on. So again, a very similar situation. It's going to be very light and fluffy snow. Most of the amounts are going to be in between that 1 to 4 inch range and likely going to see some slick spots. Here's a look at the winter storm severity index. Minor impacts level 2 out of 5 when it comes to those impacts to travel. It might be a little dicier, though, tomorrow than it was with yesterday's system. That's because we are seeing temperatures so cold, and as temperatures get chillier, road treatments are less effective. Not saying that they're not going to work, but they definitely take, it will take a lot more time to clear off those roads. So it might be a little dicier through tomorrow afternoon and evening with those road conditions. But today we should be in the mid to upper 20s. Again, fairly quiet conditions. Can't rule out that possibility for a flurry at times here, especially by the evening. Dropping in some very cold temperatures tonight. We go down to the single digits. And then by tomorrow morning, anytime between 6 and 7 o'clock, I think is when we're going to start to see those snow showers begin to push in. And like I said, almost a carbon copy from that system that we saw yesterday. By the time we do get to around 2, 3 o'clock, most of the snow showers should be pushing well off to our south and to our east. Saturday, though, is going to be frigid all day, single digits, but feels like temperatures are going to be well below 0. Now, the one nice thing is it's not going to be very windy, but it doesn't take much wind to make it feel very cold with how chilly this air is going to be. And as we look at that snowfall tracker, again, like I said, 1 to 4 inches is a pretty good bet for us as we look at those snow chances for tomorrow. Anywhere from 2 to 3 inches from Highway 30 to especially Interstate 80. And then farther south is where we're starting to see trends to 2 to 4 inches possible by the time we wrap things up with the snow by tomorrow afternoon. But like I have been saying basically all week, it's going to be that cold that's going to be a little more notable. So below 0 wind chills all day Saturday. This is a look at 3 p.m. when the snow is coming to an end. It's going to feel basically like -10 for most of us. And then we go into Saturday night. Sunday morning still expected to be the most dangerous of the wind chills as we're going to go down to -25 to -30. And then still going to see some pretty chilly air, especially going into Monday morning. We might see a couple more headlines, maybe for areas off to the north before we start to rebound by Monday afternoon, but still going to feel well below 0 into Monday morning. So that's why I've kind of extended this weather impact alert through the weekend just to account for those negative wind chills that we're going to see. But we do see a really fast rebound by Monday afternoon, getting back to the 20s, 30s for Tuesday, 40s for Wednesday. And we're going to take a nice break here. And I know it seemed so likely with all the snow that we have been seeing that we could potentially get a white Christmas. Well, those chances are starting to go down, and pretty significantly, because we see trends that we're going to be in a warmer air mass up until Christmas Day, with highs in the upper 30s, low 40s. So we're going to see a lot of snow melting conditions for us here as we look at the next 14 days. So again, that's just a quick update on on our forecast here heading into the weekend. I do want to take a look at some of your questions here because I do have a radio hit that I'm going to have to attend to here soon. So I want to get through these as much as I can. Linda asks, will the snow on Saturday be fluffy or heavy snow? It is going to be very fluffy. Temperature profiles, single digits, it's going to be extremely, extremely light and fluffy. A viewer asks, a friend told me today that the early snow that we have been having will be causing an interesting tornado season in the spring. Have you heard of this before? So usually when we're talking about how our winter shapes up into our severe weather season, a lot of times it has to do with, you hear us talk about it all the time, El Nino or La Nina, depending on which phase we are in. Well, we're in a La Nina right now. I believe we are expected to transition out of that by the time we get to the early part of 2026. But La Nina usually does bring in cooler and usually can bring in snowier conditions for the winter. If we stay in a La Nina heading into the spring, that can also ramp up our severe weather season. So there is some association with that, but it just depends on the entire pattern. Usually more snow itself doesn't really influence that tornado season because usually our active, let me think, our most active severe weather month is May and June, and we're done with snow. We're well done with snow by that time. So yeah, there is some correlation there. Billy, good morning, Ms. Trackbine. What is typically the millibars for an Alberta clipper, and is there any possibility of intensification for the storm? Thank you for your time, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day. They're usually not very strong systems. They don't have much moisture associated with it. They don't have that big temperature change like we see with a lot of these systems too, which also can intensify a lot of these systems. Instead, this is just going to be a really cold air mass that's settling in over us. So we're not really expecting it to intensify. I'm not expecting it to bring in heavy winds. I'm not expecting any of that. It's just going to be the snow. And again, it's looking almost identical to yesterday's system. So right now, not expecting intensification. But because of how cold those temperatures are, we get that really light, fluffy snow. That could actually cause the snow to stack up a little quicker. So maybe it could see some isolated amounts of up to 5 inches, but that's trending more towards, I'd say, Macomb to Peoria to maybe get some of those reports for tomorrow. Laura says, how much snow for Rock Falls out of this system? Let me pull up the snowfall map so we can leave it up. Okay, Sterling Rock Falls region, I'm thinking anywhere between 2 to 3 inches is a good bet for the Sterling Rock Falls area. Linnell says, how bad will the next round of weather be for us up here in Elizabeth? In Elizabeth, probably about 1 to 2 inches, so really not bad. This is not a intimidating amount of snow. Again, this is not intimidating by any means. It's going to be light and fluffy, very, very, very similar, almost identical to what we got yesterday. Although I will say it is starting to push out some higher amounts, especially south of I-80, where we're getting between 3 to 4 inches from Mount Pleasant, Burlington to Galesburg. I think the reason why this is happening is just because of how much colder the air is going to be compared to yesterday's system. Riley says, I've been hearing some people say that Saturday's snow might be considered a winter storm. I just wanted to get your viewpoint on how accurate does that look right now. I do not think that this is going to get upgraded to a winter storm. I really don't. If it does, it would be seen more so for people, like I said, to Macomb, Peoria, Bloomington, where those higher amounts might trend a little bit more. Maybe they will issue a winter storm for those areas because it just depends on where you are in the country for what defines a winter storm. Usually for us here in our area, it's usually anytime we are forecasting between that 5 to 6 inch mark for a lot of us. that we see a winter storm watch or warning issued. I think we're going to stay, most of us are going to stay at least in advisory criteria, if that makes sense. Tyler says, when will we see any alerts for the temperatures this weekend? I have basically all week our alert, our weather impact alerts have been mainly for the cold this weekend. Again, the timeline for the snow tomorrow is going to be through the morning, early afternoon. Then the rest of the weekend's alerts are just going to be cold. Now, when it comes to any cold weather headlines that the National Weather Service will issue, since we do have a winter weather advisory right now, they'll probably hold off on issuing that until tomorrow. And that will likely be issued for Sunday morning because that still looks like that's going to be the coldest of the upcoming weekend. Steve says, when will Savannah be getting more snow? Tomorrow. You will be getting more snow tomorrow. And again, the farther north you are of I-80, the less snow that you are expected to get at this point. Again, this trend of the track is still kind of similar to yesterday's. So the Savannah area, right now, your best bet is 1 to 2 inches. But we also know with yesterday's system, a 12-hour window can cause a lot of change. So be sure that you are staying updated on the forecast, especially checking in with James Zahara later on this evening. He'll have an updated run for you. And then, of course, I will be in tomorrow morning actually tracking the system into the area. So we know that there can still be some changes. Tyler, that was Tyler's second question. Could this still shift either north or south? Yes, it could still definitely shift either north or south. Like I said, from Wednesday night into Thursday morning, just that 12-hour window, we saw a big shift of about 50 miles to the storm track. And again, that 50-mile shift can be the difference between a couple inches of snow for your area. So like I said, this is kind of what we're thinking right now. Heaviest amount south of I-80, anywhere between 2 and 4 inches. Along I-80 and north, anywhere between, I'd say 1 to 3 inches is going to be a good guess right now. But like I said, James Zahara will have another update going on later on this evening. You can join him again here on the News 8 Plus streaming app, and I believe Facebook again. He will have a live stream to answer all your questions at around 8 o'clock this evening. And then, like I said, I will be in tomorrow morning to track in all the snow and cold for you. But that is all the questions that we have gotten through today. Of course, you can join me again. Good Morning Quad Cities at 11. We'll have another update for you on the snow and the cold heading our way. You can join us there as well. But in the meantime, everyone have a great Friday and have a great weekend. And be sure to stay warm.